Hello, everybody. This is Jessica Pickens with Comment Over Hollywood. I am here today with Kim Luperi and Danny Reid, who have just published the new book, Pre-Code Essentials, Must-See Cinema from Hollywood's Untamed Era from 1930 to 1934. Hello, my longtime friends.
I
Um, so wanted to kick us off with first asking y'all, and then I'll share what your favorite pre-code film is and why. Go ahead, Kim. We'll start with you.
Yeah, mine, I usually say Babyface, and that's because it is an iconic pre-code, obviously. It's the one that I know the most about. But also it's a essential pre-code. Obviously, it's in our book. And what I love about it today, about getting to watch and talk about it today, is the fact that those two versions survive. And I don't know, that's obviously very rare. There might be a few other movies that is the case for, that we can kind of actively see both versions, but it's very rare. And so I love that because you get to see really the era almost in action between those two, and what, they were deeming needed to be cut in 1933 to pass muster. So that's what I know, one of the many reasons I love that movie.
I love that. What about you, Danny?
I always go with Gold Diggers of 1933. That's my favorite film. I love the musical numbers. It's a very saucy, funny movie. Joan Blondell at her best and least dressed. Oh, that rhymed. And also Warren Williams, really funny. Guy could be. Eileen McMahon just kills it as like the sardonic woman. Ginger Rogers gets pushed around a lot, which is always fun. It's a really fun movie, but it also has a lot of commentary about then social issues. It ends with just a gut punch out of nowhere. It's such a wild ride, and it really is evocative of the era. So,
Yes, those are both great. I love Babyface and Gold Diggers 1933. I was actually just thinking and just pulled out of my hat. I really love Miracle Woman from 1931, and I know it's not in y'all's book, but I love it's still relevant as many of these still are, about basically just frauds in the church. And Barbara Stanwyck's so great. I love a bland man like David Manners. And I don't know. And also it's kind of like weirdly ties to Elmer Gantry later on. But I just really like the highlighting of hypocrisy in evangelism, like it does.
yeah,
So go ahead.
it's also one of the rare pre-codes with somebody shooting up the middle finger too. So,
Yes, love
yeah.
that. So, you know, wh- while people can obviously read your book, those who haven't seen it, tell us in your own words, what is pre-code? How would you define it for somebody you met somebody in an elevator? What's your pre-code elevator speech?
Danny, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I end up doing it quite a bit to friends, family, and other people who are concerned about me. So I've been writing about pre-code for about 10 years. Pre-code Hollywood is basically, it's a lot of different definitions. I usually go with Hollywood movies made between 1930 to 1934, which notably is after the Motion Picture Production Code is adopted, but before it's enforced. So it's adopted in 1930, and then it becomes enforced in 1934. And during that time, it is but a mere suggestion. And studios are desperate. They're over leveraged themselves for the coming of sound. The Great Depression hits. Business is bad. Things are looking worse. There's a lot of political turmoil in the country as figures like Hitler and Mussolini rise up in Europe. And so there's all these really interesting things going on in that direction. Socially, for women, there's a lot of issues coming with the Great Depression and the end of the Jazz Age, where they've been very liberated. Then suddenly there's this economic shock, and so suddenly there has to be a lot of more of a reckoning. Um, and there's interesting stuff going on with race, with all these different groups and identities. It's a very exciting time for movies because the what we would consider today, like you go to Barnes and Noble and you buy a screenplay book that tells you how to save the cat. That you can do that. Back in the 1930s, they're just taking books as stories at random and shoving them together and seeing how it works. So they're not predictable. They never go where you think they're going to go. So in 1930, that might have meant like very talky, stagey musicals coming off of the jazz singer trend. And by 1934, it is just pure balls to the wall insanity. So it's a very exciting time.
Do you have anything to add, Kim?
Yeah, I mean, all that was great and definitely, yeah, true of the period. I feel like in the book we also describe it more as like a spirit or a vibe, because not everything made during that era was pre-code. You know, you have Shirley Temple movies, you have
Right.
Little Women.
I love that point y'all made. I was like, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. So like not every, and you have period pieces. You know, you do watch some movies during that time, and it's like, yeah, this just doesn't have any of the elements that we think of as pre-code, but
Mhm.
a lot of the films do, and a lot of the films have that commentary, and they really have a willingness to go to those more authentic places, maybe that are relatable and relevant to people of the time, and a little bit more raw or honest than you would see before that or after that, of course, for a long time. And yeah, sometimes more fun too. A lot of times more fun.
So what originally got both of you into pre-code film?
Kim?
Yeah, that I wish I had a better story for this, because I don't 100% remember, but I know that I was really interested in classic films as a teenager because I watched Pride and Prejudice from 1940, which is
The
not a
best.
pre-code whatsoever. And I fell down the classic film rabbit hole there, and I must have seen a pre-code, I'm assuming, on TCM or something that
Mhm.
really led me to Mark Vieira's Sin and Soft Focus, because I do remember reading that cover to cover. And I think that was the first pre-code book I read cover to cover. And because that was such a fantastic overview of the era, mentioning all these different films, I know I must have, you know, started seeking them out from there. So I think that was really my pre-code origin story.
I love it. How about you, Danny?
Mine's kind of similar, where it's kind of scattershot. Like I saw King Kong in the theaters when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
My dad loved the Marx Brothers, so we'd seen all those movies growing up. It really kind of what got me specifically focused on pre-code. It's not very exciting. I had a blog with some friends for a while where we reviewed movies, and we were doing DVD reviews to try and get up the number of articles we put out. And one of them was about Forbidden Hollywood Volume 1, DVD.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I saw The Divorcee and Redheaded Woman, and it was just blew me away. Like the supplemental features were so exciting and so interesting. So that kind of started driving me towards more of them, learning more about like Norma Shear, all these stars I hadn't really heard of up to that point. And then eventually I spun that off onto my own blog, and now I've seen probably about 1,000 movies from those 4 years. And it's just really fascinating and such an exciting time in history. And it's when that first saw that, that was about 2010, right after the Great Recession, the
Mhm.
housing market crash. And I was like, oh, okay, these movies are still super relevant. And the fun part is every few years that kind of comes back. You're like, oh, well, this aspect of this movie is really relevant. Or this movie, which discusses like abortion rights. Oh, well, that's still relevant. Or this movie,
Yeah.
you know, it's just because those movies didn't shy away from social issues and were very like willing to put a lot of stuff out there. They always stay very fresh, which I find
Right.
really exciting.
It's very cool. So y'all both been writing about pre-code movies for a long time, like Danny, you just said, since for 10 years. What inspired y'all to finally put pen to paper and write a book?
Well, it's
And to
been
elaborate on it, even.
that's been like more than 10 years. So we met at the TCM Film Festival in either 15 or 16.
Hmm.
And I just edited an essay compilation on the Thin Man movies and gave Kim a copy of that. And we started talking, and Kim does like cool research. Like she goes into Margaret Herrick. She's done all this great stuff with the Academy. I'm a military spouse, so I'm always moving all over the place. So I can't really like do deep research like she can do, and she's really good at it. I just don't have the attention span sometimes, I think. Um, so we started talking about it. We started talking about how this would be a great like companion piece to all the different pre-code books. And we actually went to TCM with our proposal back then and said, "Hey, would you like to do this?" And they said, "Oh, that's great. We would love to, but unfortunately, last week we just talked to Mark Vieira, and we're going to be reissuing like the Sin and Soft Focus as Forbidden
Dang.
Hollywood." It was like literally just like a few weeks like off. And so, but we met the TCM people. They said they keep us in the back of their mind. And in that time, Kim and I worked on the book in fits and starts. The Twitter account got really popular for a while before Twitter went to hell. And then Kim started an Instagram account back in 2020, and that really took off because she's really good at it. So that kind of eventually TCM came back to us and like, Forbidden Hollywood sold great. I think it's time for a follow up. And so we'd had some version of the book kind of already ready. It was actually way longer than they wanted it to be, so we had to do a lot of trimming and cutting, and that's a great way to enter into a contract, is being like, don't worry, we'll definitely get you the book. It's just a matter of getting the book out
Yeah,
of the writing. So yeah.
that's awesome. Well, the book is awesome. I have been reading it. And so I was actually looking and like reviewing all the movies that y'all cover in here. I think there's only two I haven't seen. I don't think I've seen. So this is Africa, and what was the other one?
I Am Suzanne.
No,
Yeah.
I've actually seen I Am Suzanne. I saw
Okay.
that at the Turner Classic Movie Film Festival in 2013, and I was like, man, this movie's strange. Um, oh darn, what was the other one? Smarty maybe was the other one that I haven't seen. But
I don't know.
You might not want to see that one.
You might
That
not
was-
have to complete the series.
it should be noted they're essential, not all good. And I think that's kind of the fun thing about the book, was we were trying to hit on like every different genre, all the great directors,
Right.
all the great stars, but then we're also being like, we're telling a story of how we went from 1930 to The Divorcee to 1934,
Right.
like Murder at the Vanities. And it's a
Yeah.
very wild ride. And Smarty is a movie that I always look at that they just didn't have the cinematic language to be able to tell the story they're trying to tell, because it doesn't work. It's like a movie that's like a spousal abuse comedy. It's awful.
Oh dear. Okay.
But it's fast. Like, I find it fascinatingly awful. Like,
So, well,
it's just,
that was my question about how you narrowed
yeah.
it down, and you kind of answered it, but I don't know if you wanted to dive a little deeper in how y'all selected the films that y'all picked. Because I mean, there's so many that are good. I mean, so many pre-code musicals you can pick from Warner Brothers, and from 42nd Street to Footlight Parade, and so how difficult was that to narrow it down and to select these?
Yeah, I mean, Danny had a list. I had some thoughts too, and I know it's so hard because there are so many musicals, there are so many horror movies, there are so many
Mhm.
gangster movies, and it's like you do have to make the choices of which ones of those to choose. So that, based on many different factors. I think originally we had 54 titles. TCM wanted 50, so we had to narrow it down a little bit more. And then luckily we had a pretty easy time, I think, with them, because they had to approve the final title list and they only asked us to take 2 out and
Mhm.
switch 2 more in. And those were because they were more so just known not as, they're pre-code, but not famous for being pre-code.
I see.
Yeah, it happened one night, and The Thin Man were the two. So, I mean, those are,
Right.
like, you
Okay.
don't think of pre-code the instant you think
Yeah.
of those two movies. So that was understandable. And I was very happy it was only 2, because I was like, oh, because we do have, like Danny mentioned, and you mentioned, I Am Suzanne. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
easy to find. A lot of people haven't
Yeah.
seen that. It's obscure. Cinenor Moran is also a little bit
Yeah.
obscure. So we had some stuff in there that definitely not as well known, which we wanted to. We wanted to have things that people would discover, especially if they were fans of this period and had seen a lot. Yeah, but it was a fun process, and also, some negotiation, but not too crazy.
Were there any movies that y'all, through your elimination process, that you're just like, I really wish we could have kept that in, that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like The Thin Man, I really did want to keep in, just because I think that's like the perfect, you watch that movie and then all the sequels are post-code, and you really see what the difference is between what a pre-code film and a post-code film is. It's like, in the first movie, they're drunk and they're just nuts, and they're just,
Right.
there's some hints that William Powell might have an interest in Marino Sullivan, and there's a lot more, like they're walking Asta around, and Asta's clearly going over to the fire hydrant and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then you watch like the sequel, and suddenly Asta's married, and they go from being these fun, freewheeling alcoholics to, oh, we're gonna have a baby at the end of this.
Yeah.
And settle down. And it's a very, like, I always find, and I mean, I edited a collection on the series. I always find it a very interesting journey that whole series goes on. The only other one I regret is we didn't get female in there. I think that one just like slipped my mind at some point, or I think that movie is pretty wild, but
I love Ruth Chatterton. I want to pause and talk about I Am Suzanne for anybody who hasn't seen it. So basically, it's a dancer, if I recall, and please jump in if I'm saying incorrectly, who there is a puppet version of her. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of puppets. Like the puppet version kind of takes over, I think. Is that how, am I remembering correctly? I just remember a lot of marionette puppets.
yeah. The thing is, if anybody's seen it, they probably saw it at a revival screening because I don't think it's ever been on home video.
I don't think so.
Um, yeah, it's like this dancer, Lillian Harvey, who is someone they're trying to bring in as a new Garbo. It didn't really work. But she's very beautiful and she's really funny in this movie. But she falls in love with a guy and he's a puppeteer. And he makes a puppet version
First
of her.
mistake.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then eventually she realizes that he's more in love with the puppet version of her than she
That's
is
it.
with him. And it turns into this dark psychosexual nightmare and like Satan dolls pop up. It ends with, I think at one point Suzanne shoots the doll version of herself.
Yes, I
And
do
then,
remember
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's absolutely insane. It's very psychological. And you read the reviews at the time, like, yeah, kids will like it.
I remember there's like, you know, how musicals in general will have like that show-stopping number, like, you know, By a Waterfall and Footlight Parade. And this is all with puppets. And I think there was like a Will Rogers puppet and maybe like all these celebrity puppets pop in. And I just remember this was at a time that the pre-codes did not bring down the house, or at least it just wasn't as well attended. It was on a Sunday, final day of the Turner Classic Movie Film Festival. I was just kind of going with the flow and went, I've never heard of this movie. I'm going to go sit in it. I think I only knew one other person moving, and I just was sitting there thinking, what the heck am I watching? Like, this is bizarre. But like, I kind of loved it because it was so different. So, you know, like I said, y'all both been writing about and researching pre-code for a long, long time. Were there any surprises, like any interesting tidbits y'all came along that you're like, wow, I never knew that before this when y'all were doing the research for the book?
I mean, for me, the fact that So This Is Africa exists, number one, because I hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen two movies when we talked about this list. I hadn't seen two movies, and it was So This Is Africa and I Am Suzanne were the ones I had not seen when we started. Obviously, have seen them both since, and they both are wild. But for me, most of the surprises, aside from those two, just really comes from the production code files, and there are just files. Not files, surprises on literally every page almost. And some of that was really, really cool to put in the book. Stuff like Gabriel of the White House, the fact that FDR was involved in that movie right before he was inaugurated. Just the timing there is kind of mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
There's pages from Redheaded Woman with extremely passionate, negative responses to that film, and just language that you're like, what is this? And so stuff like that I love because people don't really get to see it. So the fact that we were able to share not only quotes from those files, but sometimes scans from those files.
Yeah.
I love that. And I feel like that will surprise some people because, again, it's not something that you really easily find in it's in other pre-code books, some, research from the files, but a lot of, other books that's not there, other general movie books. So there's a ton of surprises, but a lot of them in those files.
Do you have anything, Danny, or anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, Kim did an amazing job with research. She found all this stuff that I'd never heard of. I'll say in my own research, like I was relooking at the entry for I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang and just going back and reading about the reaction to that movie, like the threatening the filmmakers saying, if you ever come to Georgia, you're going to be tarred and feathered.
Yeah.
Just the whole criminal justice reform attempts and how it worked for a while and then it kind of slipped back. It's just a very fascinating story. It's probably one of my favorite movies. And one of the great examples of how Warner Brothers at the time was trying to do social justice pictures. And the reaction to that movie, like, changed how, like, Wild Boys from the Road, all their other ones would also end too. So it's just a very interesting kind of moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned this before, and y'all I'll definitely talk about this in your book, just like how different those movies were. There's so many, like you said, prison reform films during that time that were clearly trying to make a difference. A lot of stuff against capitalism, a lot more of emancipated women kind of stories where, like, y'all even quote it in The Divorcee that when she's telling her husband off, My bed, you're the only one basically who's not welcome in my bedroom. I love it. But but it's just such an interesting time, especially because I feel people who might not be as embedded in classic films like we are, think that it's a really like a prudish Leave It to Beaver time, and this is far different than that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Go
Oh
ahead.
no, just but yeah, pre-codes are fun because again, they're almost 100 years old, which is kind of crazy to think about, and they can still surprise you. Whether
Right.
or not you know a lot about the era, I still see things in movies that I'm like, oh my gosh, how did they get away with that?
Yes.
It's really fun that way.
Like practically naked Edward Arnold. Didn't
Oh
expect
yeah,
to ever see that.
it's 30 Day Princess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that
you
movie.
don't forget.
Well, that was the bulk of my questions. I was going to end with a fun one. Who are your favorite pre-code stars?
Oh, well, we dedicated the book to Barbara Stanwyck
That's
for a
true.
reason.
That's true.
We both
And
love
your
her. My
your
daughter's
child. Yeah.
Yeah, I named my daughter after her.
Mhm.
And then yeah, Kim has the baby face shirt she was wearing to the screening at Night Nurse, and
Yeah.
Stanwyck's a favorite. I have a big thing for Kay Francis. I think she's gorgeous, and just
Yes.
she's such a unique star to that period. Like her star, like after 1934, just plummeted. But
Hmm.
during that time, she made like Man Wanted, Trouble in Paradise, Jewel Robbery, One Way Passage, which is one of my favorite movies. And then I really have
Yes.
fallen in love with like Frederick March over the years too.
Oh
He's
yeah.
very sensitive, very sweet. We were at AFI Silver Spring. We saw The Wild Party, and he's got this worst mustache in the world, but he just is dynamite in that film, just grounding the whole thing as this lovesick professor who's like, I'm a stern hard ass, but I love you, Clara Bow. It really works. So those would be my other picks. Yeah.
How
No,
about you, Kim?
I feel like Wild Party Man, that romance doesn't make sense, but like I love him in that movie. I'm like, yes, I will fall for you. Yes. Yeah, Stanwyck, of course, definitely high up. I also really love Joan Blondell and Glenda Farrell,
Mm.
together or separate. Really, anything they do, I will watch. And definitely William Powell is a
Mhm.
big one for me. Thin Man is one of my all-time favorite films, but I also like him in this period. He didn't really get as many of the villain roles during pre-code. He did some of those in the silent era, but it's just he's always charming, whatever he does for the most part. So
I
I
agree.
like him too.
I love everybody that y'all love, of course. I really love Kay Francis. Obviously, Comet Over Hollywood is named for Comet Over Broadway.
Yeah.
One pre-code I love is Mandalay because she and Ricardo Cortez, he's like, I'm done with you. And then she's like, but then he's like, but I'm going to sell you into prostitution. But then why don't you love me anymore? I sold you into prostitution. So that's a great one. I also love Warren William because he's just always so smarmy in the most charming way.
Yeah.
But well, this has been a pleasure. Where can people buy your book?
It's on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes and Noble. Any major online retailer should be able to pick it up. We were around New York City, and they had copies available at Barnes and Noble and the Strand. So it's out there. I've heard it's moving numbers, which is great. We try to write it for newbies and for people with a lot of experience. I had somebody say, "Oh, I've seen 40 of the movies in here." I'm like, "Cool, then there's 10 you haven't seen. That's awesome." But even if you've seen the movies, there's a lot of great background detail that might not have been included in other places because Kim did so much cool research. So we really try to make this something unique. It doesn't have any of our previous writing. All the pictures that Kim selected for this aren't in any of the other TCM pre-code books. So it's a very unique thing to stand on its own too.
Good. I will say to echo that I've seen most of these movies, but there were a lot of facts I did not know. So y'all have done a wonderful job. And if they're interested in following your pre-code accounts, where can they find that?
I'm on Instagram at precode.com. I'm the Instagram arm.
And I do Blue Sky now because I'm precode.com, all just written out. And then the website is pre-code.com.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jessica.
All right.